As usual, I speak in the name of my ancestors, the father of my country, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the goddess of my country, Azali, and my grandparents, Saïl and Ejiyan Mocombe, who taught me the ways of the ancestors. I've had some feedback from the videos regarding Haitian epistemology, and one of the biggest criticism from articles I've submitted for publication, as well as for my book, which is coming out, titled Haitian Vilokan Idealism, is some Haitians are saying, oh, Vodou c'est une religion, meaning Vodou is a religion, and how can we talk about Haitian Vodou having an epistemology? And and some of the reactions from from reviews I've received regarding a couple of the articles I've sent out for publication is that they weren't aware, many reviewers weren't aware that there was even a Haitian epistemology. Many assumed that every black thought fell under the reactionary theory we call Afrocentrism, but that's foolishness. What I had to emphasize for many people who watch the videos and who ask questions and who have read my journal articles is the fact that just like Christianity, Western philosophy as well as Western science begins with what we call the demystification of Christianity, which means they for example, we begin Western modern philosophy with René Descartes, who begins by arguing that he does a thought experiment by talking about, oh, is there a religious demon that can deceive me, but God will not allow me to be deceived. So once I know that my heart is in the right place and God will not allow me to be deceived, I can go on and do experimental analysis, etc. So Descartes begins by demystifying Christianity to start to begin his method of doubt. Well, this is the same process that I'm arguing for in regards to constituting or constructing a Haitian epistemology. We have to begin the deconstruction, we have to begin the analysis of the Haitian epistemology by demystifying the religion of Vodou. So when I talk about Haitian epistemology, I begin by demystifying. What does that mean? Well, the process begins with the late Atia Vodou Max Beauvoir, who argued that we must begin to demystify Vodou, take out all of the superstitions, and rationalize, and in rationalizing Vodou, it's herbal medicine, it's proverbs, etc. We can construct an epistemology from this demystification process. So we demystify Vodou by getting rid of the superstition. Why are you arguing that we need to get rid of the superstition? In Haitian Vodou, there's concept called Luga, werewolves. I've never seen a man turn into a werewolf, so some of this stuff is just simply foolishness, or we can test them to see whether or not they are veridical or have validity. So to construct or constitute a Haitian epistemology, we have to demystify Vodou. And demystifying Vodou, I argue, will give us what I call Haitian Vilokan Idealism. And this Vilokan Haitian, the demystification of Vodou gives rise to an epistemology I call Haitian Vilokan Idealism, and within Haitian Vilokan Idealism, we have four processes. A hermeneutical phenomenology, because in Haitian Vodou, consciousness, there are things in consciousness. There is a parallel world created by God, and this parallel world have concepts by which we ought to reproduce our lives, how we should live in the material world. So these things are in our consciousness, and we recursively reorganize them as our material praxis. So in Haitian Vilokan Idealism, we have a phenomenology, a hermeneutical phenomenology, because it's up to us to interpret the concepts by which we ought to recursively reorganize our lives. We have a normative ethic, what's right and wrong etc., which is called reciprocal justice. Again, I said that's simply an eye for an eye ethic. There is a materialism in Vodou because we recursively reorganize the ideals or the laws of Vodou in our material practice. In our practice, we reproduce these concepts. And the historical approach we recursively reorganize our praxis is an anti-dialectical approach to historical, anti-dialectical approach. And from there, I argue we can deduce a methodology before I get to that. So we have the demystification process of Vodou gives us an epistemology I call Haitian Vilokan Idealism. Within Haitian Vilokan Idealism, there are four concepts: a hermeneutical phenomenology, a reciprocal normative ethic, a materialism, and an anti-dialectical approach to the historical process. All of this, within Vodou, there is also a form of system and social integration. System and social integration. I'm going to abbreviate integration, which I call Lacuism in the Voodoo ethic and the spirit of communism. That is the title of my book. Lacuism is the form of system integration, and the Voodoo ethic is the form of social integration. And from there, what I've done is develop a methodology for the social sciences, which I call phenomenological structuralism. This is a theory and a method. Phenomenological structuralism. This is a theory and a method, structuralism, that I have developed for the social sciences. And the article is published, Phenomenological Structuralism, a theory of structurationists, a structurationist theory to human action. And there's a book coming out titled Phenomenological Structuralism. So it's the demystification of Vodou gives us an epistemology I call Haitian Vilokan Idealism. Within Haitian Vilokan Idealism, there are four concepts or four elements: a hermeneutical phenomenology, a reciprocal normative ethic, a materialism, and an anti-dialectic, which is expressed through a form of system and social integration I call Lacuism, and the Voodoo ethic and the spirit of communism. And within that, I've developed a theory and method for the social sciences I call phenomenological. I spelled phenomenological incorrectly. Phenomenological structuralism. And this phenomenological structuralism, I argue we can apply in the social sciences as a theory and a methodology to against, for example, structuralism, against social action theory. So that's the theory that I've developed for the social sciences. And within that, there's a theory of learning and development that I am currently developing that we can utilize to institutionalize in the school systems of Haiti, so we can begin to develop a science, a methodology in Haitian in the Haitian educational system. Because what has happened, and I will end with this, what has happened, the reason why we're way behind in terms of Haiti and other black countries in developing our own methodologies, our own epistemology, partly to do with slavery. The Germans developed it, they institutionalized it. For example, Kant will begin German idealism with his transcendental idealistic philosophy, and all subsequent theorists will build off Kant. Hegel, Husserl, Heidegger, etc., and Karl Marx. Oh, well, the same processes have been taking place in Haiti. It's just the voodoo sect that has been doing it. Like I mentioned earlier, Max Beauvoir began this, prior to his death, began this demystification and rationalization process that I'm continuing. And once we institutionalize that, all subsequent academics are to build off of that and constitute a Haitian epistemology, for the social sciences, and for psychology, method of learning and development for psychology. Get away from, for example, Vygotskian Russian idealism, and start to constitute our own Haitian idealism and Haitian methodology. So I hope this offers some clarification for people who have questions about how can Vodou have an epistemology, etc., etc. Just like the West Christianity, Western metaphysics begin with the demystification of Christianity, Western science. Well, the same thing for us to constitute, forget the Afrocentric reactionary foolishness. If we take Vodou as a religion the Africans were recursively reorganizing and practicing prior to enslavement, once we demystify it, I argue we get Haitian Vilokan Idealism, these four concepts, and there are parallels between what would develop in Vodou and what happened in the West, and we'll see some elements of that my next lecture, but in my next article. So I hope this offers some clarification for many people.